Hi, welcome back to another episode of Breaking It Down with Steve Laurie. Today we're going to talk about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, for both men and women. It is a medical procedure that we are trying. We're in our second round, and we just want to talk about how it's worked for us. It definitely, intimacy, physical intimacy is definitely something that has an impact on relationships, which is something that we talk about a lot. And so we just want to talk about our experience. I think going into it, we both had the perception that it would be a panacea, that there wouldn't be any downsides, and we have experienced some challenges related to it. And so, yeah, we're just going to talk about it for a while and see if it's relatable to people that might be considering it or that are doing it. Just might gain some insights from our experience. So I've introduced it. So what? Yeah, what have your observations been?
This is a vulnerable topic, and there's no script here, and that he really wants to talk about this, so I'm going to let him lead. And, what's the points you want to make, honey?
Well, I think a really interesting thing that came up for us that was a challenge was when we'd gone through the first round of both of us on it. In fact, Lori got it first. And she got up to speed. What's a nice way to put it? I don't want to say horny. Her sex drive kicked into gear and kind of left me in the dust.
And that's a good way to say
and so I did my best to keep up, but it did help to get the male hormone replacement therapy to kind of rev me up some too, and it was wonderful. We were in sync, having a great time in a lot of ways, a lot of new ways. It was really cool. We were just, and I remember in that period that I brought up that I was kind of concerned about what would happen when we weren't anymore, because it was so. It was not only enhancing for our sex life, it was enhancing for our, what's the right, what kind of intimacy? Guys only think there's sexual intimacy.
Well, emotional?
I think it had a big impact on our emotional intimacy. And in my explorations, this is totally unstimulating to our bulldog who's off camera. He's snoring. Sorry about that.
Hopefully you're not snoring.
It had a big impact on our emotional intimacy, and one thing in my research that I found was someone describing it as rose-colored glasses, that the hormones that you experience from sexual intimacy kind of turn you starry-eyed and gaga, and you kind of overlook some of the things that would have normally cause friction relationally. And so I kind of wondered about what would happen when that had disappeared, when those rose-colored glasses came off. And I don't want to make it sound like I was, prophetic, but in the moment, Lori's good advice was just enjoy the ride, and we were. But I, in my nature, I was worried about when it was gone, instead of just being, I was in the moment, but I was also forward looking. And
can I interject?
Yeah.
His core wound is love's gonna go away. So, is that okay to say?
Absolutely.
Okay, so love's gonna go away, and so there's was this slight anxiety in him, not a worry, but a slight anxiety of, oh, this is so great, and you're so into me, and you're so excited to see me, and I always adore him, and I always love him, and enjoy him, but it was that infatuation stage, I would say.
Right, yeah, it brought back that, it brought that back.
Because on a physical level, I was feeling like I was in my 20s. So I had all this, I wasn't tired, I had all this energy. My testosterone had been at a 19 and it went up to 450. So, and I'll tell you a funny story because we laughed about this. We went on a date and he had worked, 12 to 14 hour shift. And I was all excited to see him, and I was like, "Oh, this is great! We're gonna go out, and we're gonna have intimacy." And on the way home, he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I thought we were gonna go home and be intimate." And he goes, "Oh, honey, I don't know. I'm beaten. I don't think I can, rise to the occasion." And literally, and I got mad. And I said, "What? What's the point of this date?" I said, "If you're not going to want to go home and mess around, I'm going to sew."
And I see where you're going with this, but you were looking at it from a very guy-centric point of view.
Right.
And sorry for my distraction. My bulldog's making a bunch of rude noises over here. I hope you're not hearing that. So go ahead, but I think you're telling the story about where I said, okay, how do you feel? I feel mad.
I feel mad.
So go ahead.
And I was all excited and happy to, spend that time. And poor guy, I still had compassion, but it was just funny. And he goes, "Now you know how men feel." And I thought, wow, that was really, really insightful. And it gave me a lot of empathy for men that when that testosterone's really rolling on a high level, boy, that is a need, right?
Yeah, and that's where we went with it. Procreation is known to be one of the base, food, procreation, and it's like a brainstem level impulse, and guys experience it as that more than women. I think women from the brainstem, that urge to procreate, that urge to have a baby is monumental. But
that's why 29 years old for a woman who's not married and doesn't have children yet, they consider that a midlife crisis for a woman, and that's when she often starts getting panicky about, oh, I need to get married, I need to have kids now. And it's funny because when I was in grad school, I had several girlfriends that married a guy and said they picked him because he'd be a really good father. And they were all around 29 years old. And I thought that was interesting so there is a lot of biological.
That is interesting. I'd never heard the midlife crisis correlation. And there are a lot of things going on in a man's midlife crisis, including the argument that there is no such thing. But if you're talking about the classic example, the loss of virility, is, and that's that goes back down to that brainstem procreation, and so it's interesting that they consider the woman's midlife crisis to be when she's seeing the end in sight of her ability to produce a child. So it's interesting.
Yeah, because they medically consider 35 years old to be a geriatric pregnancy, which is
an insult.
Yes, so negative and ridiculous, but I'm not a doctor, so.
Yeah. Well,
okay,
we connect terms to unrelated areas, but as people. But anyway, so that's a great thing, because that was one of the big insights that we had, is that flip of that role of the woman being the sexual aggressor and the man, and it taught me some things too. It gave me empathy for what it feels like to be hounded for sex. Really, no, seriously, it put the shoe on the other foot, and that, I read articles, I read a lot of Utango, and those seem to be more female focused, and talking about that burden of being constantly pursued, and and it goes into unhealthy areas of emotional blackmail and, ways that guys, healthy and unhealthy, but in their need,
or get resentful.
Good, push for sex, all the many different ways, and the many different ways that women become resentful. So it gave both of us.
Well, the man gets resentful, and then she doesn't really understand what's going on. Why is he mad at me? And it's
because if you haven't experienced it, it could, and then there are cases where it's just a baby crying for their candy, and that isn't all it is. No. And so you got to experience that. But anyway, back to the original point.
But that is a powerful point of we both had empathy truly for the other sex of, oh, this is what it's like. So yes. that in and of itself was a powerful experience to it.
And I don't know if we've had the discussion of empathy and is it possible to truly have empathy if you haven't experienced, and I did find that there are different categories of empathy, but I can't remember the terms, but anyway, informed empathy or something like that. Anyway, so I'm trying to remember back to the original point that I was making about
this is how our normal conversations go.
Yes.
We just go from one thing to the next thing, and yeah.
So anyway, we got to that point, and then so me missing it, that small crisis did happen. Lori was, because we weren't really synced up, and I'm not sure it's possible because the male and female hormone replacement therapies, their timing and everything, like a man needs a lot more and more often, or I don't know.
No, it's the woman who needs it like every 3.5 to 4 months,
but
and he can go up to 6 months because his are stronger, and
so the ebb and
when
flow
it wears off, you start to really notice. And what I noticed was the tiredness coming back, which directly influences,
Yeah, sure. So the ebb and flow isn't aligned, and our doctor does try to not wait until it's completely gone, the hormones, whatever. They try to time it in a healthy way, so to catch you before you've completely fallen back to your normal baseline for your age. So, as I said before, Lori had gotten on it. I got on it to catch up. She was declining. Her, testosterone probably mainly was declining. Yeah. Mine was still, it was probably a little past peak, but still up there. So then, we had the same argument / discussion that I was angry because I couldn't get it. She's angry at me because I'm angry about it, because that's the funny thing about empathy. It's lost so easily when your perspective changes. That's not a personal, I've got a funny story, but I'm not going to go there. But yeah, when your perspective changes, your access to empathy changes, and based on where you truly are in that moment. So then you have to reach for that empathy. And so I'm angry, she's angry that I'm angry, but we were able to get past that and truly talk. And when I was able, in my wound, to have permission to say I was mad, and to be able to explain where I was coming from, because Lori, in her health, isn't upset at me for being mad. She looks beyond that to be upset at me if that anger is coming from an unhealthy place.
Or it's not being truthful. I really have a heat-seeking missile inside of me of what's the truth, and as soon as he became vulnerable and explained why he was actually sad, and he actually said to me, I just really miss that look in your eye of, wanting me and be totally into me.
Feeling desired.
Right,
because for me, it went way beyond just the sex in the moment, which that was a factor.
Yeah.
But when I examined it, I realized that it went well beyond that into those areas of, and those were things that she could connect with.
Well, what woman who really loves her spouse wouldn't be, that's just music to my ears to hear, I miss that. And then I can access empathy again, right? So that was good that we.
Yeah, it was definitely a growth experience.
But that's a whole nother video, is how in marriage you have to learn how to become vulnerable with your partner, and just instead of just staying in the immediate emotion that you're feeling.
Yeah, and so much goes into that. You have to, as a person and as a guy, be able to access what's underneath the anger, that safe emotion that men always go to. And then, the partner's got to be willing to look past the anger, to be vulnerable enough to gain empathy for what's going on below the surface. And, and then back to a man being able to express it. So it's challenging. But it was, it was a growth experience. Like, I try to treat every problem that I face as a growth experience, an opportunity for growth.
Which is, part of the high respect. And it was cute because we both recently had to get our pellets again, and he spent 2.5 days making me sugar cookie valentines that were decorated, and half of them were really sweet sayings and half of them were really naughty sayings. And
shockingly.
And the other day he's talking about a topic, and at the end I said, okay, but what does any of that have to do with sex? It's like, when are we going to talk about that? So he started laughing, and now there's so many fun cues of, oh, you're feeling great again,
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was having trouble understanding where that went, and but we're back in sync, and it's a wonderful feeling, and it's not a Band-Aid for a relationship that's in trouble, but
no.
It can certainly be an enhancement and even an on-ramp back to a better plane of intimacy, emotional intimacy.
Well, especially for women after menopause, I mean, you don't realize how much your hormones impact how you feel and your outlook, and doctors aren't paid. General doctors are not paid to go into hormones, so they see your normal levels and they think you're fine. But when you really get to the specifics of it, fine is not feeling good.
Right. That's like saying healthy should translate to emotional health. You can be as healthy as a horse physically and be a train wreck emotionally.
Exactly. So for women, have a lot of compassion for yourself. That, like, one night I said to him, the desire's there, but I physically am exhausted.
It's funny because from her point of view, it was supposed to make me feel better, and actually is like, it made me feel worse. It's like, oh, so you're it's supposed to make me feel better to know that you want it and still won't, won't, and
So so that's been a really fun learning for us.
And so those are some stories around some of the challenges and benefits that we've experienced. Are there any other points in this journey that you want to talk about? Okay.
I think we said enough. It's on the World Wide Web.
So, I hope that that's brings some encouragement or some curiosity about trying it. Because all in all, it's definitely a good thing. And one funny thing that came to mind, you're saying, back to just how we're built and what's natural. If a woman is going in, menopausal, going into a period where they can't have children, of course they would be, again, back to the brainstem. It's like, no, I can't have any more babies. They won't survive. That's not what you're thinking, obviously, but you're being fed chemicals into your brain that, like, don't let him touch you. Put off vibes that tell him you don't want him. Get
But
mad.
Right, you can still get pregnant then.
Yeah, because I mean, it is life and death.
Sure.
If I have a baby and it dies,
Yeah.
and again, you're not thinking of this logically. It's like the fight or flight. It's brainstem built into you. Don't have any more babies. They won't survive. So our resources will go into something that won't go anywhere. So it's interesting to think about.
And in some earlier videos, I mentioned that I have a bossy side, and this is how it shows up. So I went to my PA, and I had the pellets before it was getting renewed before Steve had gotten his, and he wasn't totally sure he was going to do it. And I said to my nurse practitioner, who's enormously gifted, and I said, listen, Steve's going to see you later in the week, and you tell him to get on those. And he's telling me that I can't drive his wiener into the ground, and that's not the correct message.
So let's get him going.
Let's get him on the right track.
So, yeah, thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.